You're listening to We Resolve to Win, the podcast for women who have resolve by women who seek to resolve conflict in their personal and professional lives and desire to negotiate no matter what. I'm your host, Elizabeth Go, a lawyer, conflict resolution expert, and negotiation coach dedicated to helping women resolve conflict at work, strengthen their relationships, and negotiate with confidence. Ladies, let's go and be great. Hey, you guys, welcome back to We Resolve to Win. As you know, this podcast is dedicated to educating you and giving you conflict resolution tactics to help you negotiate, and tactics to help you win overall in many different areas of your life. So today I'm going to talk about some of my personal failings. I'm going to talk about one specific situation that I was in many, many years ago and some things that I learned in that situation. One of the things about conflict resolution that is so important from an individual perspective is the ability to pause and assess yourself. Many times we enter into situations and we exit situations and we don't take a proper assessment. And I mean a full 360 assessment. And we're going to talk about what that looks like in future episodes. But today, I want to talk to you about my personal failings and some of the things that I learned in this situation. In law school, I was super excited about getting an internship. Having an internship was a huge deal because if you got an internship and you did very well at the end of law school, you would be able to, fingers crossed, get a job with that particular agency. So I worked so hard to get this internship, and it was at the county office working in the civil division. And I was super excited about the opportunity to learn more and to meet people. And again, after law school, hopefully get a job, fingers crossed. And so as a certified intern, I was newly minted. I walked into the office. I was super nervous and excited at the same time. And I was assigned essentially several cases to do some research on those cases and to support the attorneys that were actively working on those cases. My direct manager was not the person that I worked with. However, he supported me in a supervisory capacity. So I would always go to him, and we'll just call him John for the sake of confidentiality. I would go to him and I would say, John, I am, very perplexed about this particular thing. I don't know exactly what I should do. Can you give me some advice specifically about how to execute on my job? So John assigned me to work with one attorney. We'll call him Craig. And when I was working with Craig, I found that he would regularly critique my work, and he would say, I'm going to give you some feedback, and he would criticize it, and then he would essentially say, this is what I think can use some work. Here are some areas that could be better. But I recognized that after a while that while his criticism could have been well-founded, it was wrapped in sandpaper. And we have to be very careful on how we are giving feedback to an individual. If you are a person and you're giving that person feedback, you want to make sure that you are honest, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you are wrapping it accordingly for that person. And we're going to talk about communication in future episodes. So when I would work with Craig, he would give me feedback, and he would essentially really come down hard. He would say, I think that you could research so much better than this, and I don't think that this is well written. And of course, I'm doing my best to kind of smile and nod and take the feedback and jot down notes. And, and I would say, yes, I'm taking copious notes. Thank you so much. And I would apologize profusely because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed at the feedback that I was receiving because most of the time, now that I think about it, probably 99.9% of the time, it was not positive. And it was kind of baptism by fire, or maybe the approach was, I'm going to haze you through this. I'm going to be very hard on you so that you can be better and so that you can do better, especially in the future if we decide to move forward and hire you. So Craig would always give me feedback, and it was very, very harsh. And I never said anything. I never took a time to say, thank you so much. However, I'm noticing I never picked up on any trends that I was verbal about. I just internalized it. And I think you know where I'm going with this. So I would internalize this feedback, and I found myself more and more and more as time continued. I found myself becoming more and more upset and angry and just agitated. If I ever had time on my calendar to sit down and meet with him, I would think to myself, oh God, here we go, And eventually there came a point, my internship for contextual purposes, my internship was a total of about 12 weeks, up to 15 weeks, but really 12 weeks. And around the eighth week, I found that I had it. I wanted to continue with the agency. I had made great connections. However, working with Craig was so polarizing and so difficult for me that I had it. So one time he called me into his office and he began to provide criticism. And in that moment, I felt as though my back was up against the wall, that he was berating me and that he was being very negative, overall very negative. And I essentially exploded. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. I exploded, and I wasn't profane. I didn't, drop any F-bombs or anything to that extent, but I escalated my voice, and I essentially said, you don't get to talk to me this way, and I disagree with you, and this is not right. No, I understand you can have a point, but you can talk to me in a better way. And he was shocked, and he was just so taken aback. So his face got beet red, and he said, well, no one has ever talked to me in this way. And I said, well, you have finally met your match, and you have finally met someone who is not afraid to speak. I mean, it was awful. It was awful. And it probably only lasted all of 60 seconds, but in my mind, it lasted an hour. And I got up, I removed myself, I slammed my book down, I removed myself from the room, and I just huffed down the hall. And I took a quick right, and I went into the office of a colleague who was a practicing attorney. And I essentially told her what happened, and the look on her face, she just said, okay, oh my God, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? And I said, I don't know. I'm upset. I need to go for a walk. This is insane. So I got up, I left her office, and I went for a walk. And I walked around the building a few times, and I found myself pacing because I thought to myself, what do I do now? This is so embarrassing. How do I face this guy? How do I ever look at him? I don't want to look at him, but I know I have about 4 more weeks left. How do I look at this guy? And I decided that I would go back inside, go to my manager, and explain the situation. And not necessarily excuse my behavior, but explain the situation. And so I got in the elevator, I walked up, I went to John's office, and I tried my best to explain what happened. But before I could even finish my sentence, he said, Craig came to my office. He told me what happened. I think you should go home for the day. You should cool off, and let's reassess in a couple of days. So before I could even get to my manager, Craig went to my manager and explained what happened. And the issue with that is that I was not able to control the narrative. I was not able to speak up in that moment in a way that would have made sense because I was still reeling from the emotions. And I essentially was sent home. And when I took a couple of days, I emailed John and I asked him if it was okay. And he said, yes, of course, we want you to finish out the internship. But when I returned, I was promptly assigned to someone else to work with. And that was basically the internship was a wrap. I had 4 more weeks. I finished out the internship. I never received a letter of recommendation. I never received a call back, and I was not extended an offer after law school, understandably so. So as much as in that moment I felt cornered, as much as I felt that he was unduly harsh, and as much as I felt that his criticism was not warranted, the 3 things that I learned from that situation looking back is one, it's very important to speak up early and to speak up often. If I had an opportunity to do it all over again, I would have sat down with Craig and I would have said, thank you so much for the opportunity to work with you. I am learning so much and I greatly appreciate the comments and the feedback that you have given to me thus far. However, this is what I'm noticing. And I would have called out specifically his inability to address me in a way that would have made me feel respected as a colleague. I was not a practicing attorney. I was only a law student. But just because I was a law student does not mean that he had the right to address me in the manner that he did. I still to this day feel as though he was quite aggressive. He was quite negative. And perhaps that was his personality and perhaps that was his work style. However, I knew then and I know now that is not something that works for me. I don't work well under those conditions. But I should have said something. I should have said something early on, and I did not. And because I did not, I allowed myself to become angry because I held so much in from week 2 up to week 8, week after week, feeling as though I was being berated, that he was denigrating me as an individual, that he was calling me stupid. And though he never specifically did that, that is how I internalized it. And thus, I should have spoken up earlier, and I should have spoken up often. And I want to encourage you to do that. If you find yourself in a situation where someone is being negative or the work environment is not conducive to what makes sense for you, or you find yourself getting stressed out or having to do some deep breathing and just prepare yourself mentally to deal with a person or to deal with a situation or with a group, it's time to say something. It's time to speak up. Because if you don't speak up, the results are that you will become passive aggressive, that you will explode, that you will find a way to eliminate yourself and quit earlier than you probably should in that particular situation. So that's the first lesson that I learned. The second lesson that I learned from this situation is that feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. So we have the ability to receive that feedback. And it's true. Often people don't wrap the gift in a way that makes sense, and people do not package it in a way that is as fruitful as it can be. However, that being said, that doesn't mean that what they're saying is incorrect. You have to be able to decipher different feedbacks, different negative words that are being said, and you have to be able to ask yourself, what is actually being said here, and how is it that they're packaging it, and how can I unwrap it in a way that makes sense, and how can I unwrap this in a way that can benefit me in the future? So feedback is a gift, and you have to be able to receive it, because when you receive feedback and you are able to take it and grow from it, you're able to better yourself, you're able to better your family, your friends, and you're also able to better your community. So when someone is giving you criticism and someone is giving you feedback, be open to it and be open to the possibility that they may be right. And the third lesson that I learned from this situation is that a lack of emotional awareness will ruin your reputation instantly. And I mean instantly. As you recall, I said earlier in my situation, I met with my colleague down the hall. I went for a walk around the building 3 to 5 times. I came back, and by the time I returned, my reputation was ruined. Was it warranted? Perhaps. It perhaps was warranted. However, I, in that moment, did not have a lack of emotional awareness. I didn't have enough emotional intelligence to take the time necessary to breathe and control my emotions so that I could immediately go to my supervisor and talk to him about the situation, or even before we have to get to that, have an opportunity to sit down and talk to John in a way that was cohesive and in a way that made sense. Instead of exploding and getting upset and then dragging someone else into the situation, going for a walk around the building and then going to my manager, I should have addressed the situation appropriately. So again, the 3 lessons that I learned from that situation were: 1, it's important to speak up often and to speak up early. 2, feedback is a gift, so receive it. And 3, a lack of emotional awareness can ruin your reputation instantaneously. And so I encourage you on this day to take some time to really assess a situation that you have been in, a situation that you may be in now, and some situations that you may cross in the future. If you look back, we have all experienced conflict in one way or another. We have all perhaps displayed behaviors that don't really shine a light on who we are as individuals. Thus, I encourage you to take some time and really assess and ask yourself, what is a situation that I have been in that looking back is either embarrassing or is one that I would not like to repeat? What are some things that I learned from that situation? And what are some ways that I can do better moving forward? And I want you to take whatever lessons you've learned from those situations, lessons about people, lessons about yourself, lessons about conflict. And I really want you to take some time and address them to yourself and say, here are some things that I will do moving forward in the future. And here are some ways that I commit to myself to being better. I hope that this podcast episode helped you, and I hope that you're able to move forward in the future as it relates to conflict resolution, whether at work, whether at home, or whether in your personal relationships, and do better for yourself tomorrow. Thanks so much, you guys. I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of We Resolve to Win. But don't worry, the fun doesn't stop there. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at We Resolve to Win. And you can join our free private Facebook group where we share success stories and strategies on negotiating and resolving conflict in all areas of your life. Until next time, be well.